How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the fruited plain, and I am delighted to have you with me as we are now 12 days from a presidential election. We will get to Kamala Harris's town hall here shortly. Never have I seen a person take a stage solo and still manage to lose a debate. It was remarkable. But before we get there, I'd like to talk about the fascists, please, because this seems to be the closing argument of the Democrats that Donald Trump is a fascist and we cannot trust Donald Trump. When Harry Truman ran against Governor Dewey, he called Governor Dewey the second coming of Hitler. Southern Democrats, when Dwight Eisenhower decided to bring in the National Guard to integrate schools, called him Hitler. Ronald Reagan was Hitler. George H.W. Bush was Hitler. George W. Bush was Hitler. Until 5 minutes ago, Dick Cheney was Hitler. Paul Ryan was Hitler. John Boehner was Hitler. Newt Gingrich was Hitler. Sarah Palin was Hitler. John McCain was Hitler. Mitt Romney was Hitler. Donald Trump is Hitler. Every Republican is Hitler to not just the Democrats and the press. But you know who is throwing grandmothers, wheelchair-bound grandmothers, in prison for praying in an abortion clinic? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. You know who's prosecuting a whistleblowing doctor in Texas for exposing a Texas hospital to perform transition surgeries contrary to law? The Biden-Harris administration. You know who wants to blow up the United States Senate by ending the filibuster so she can pack the Supreme Court with judges so that she can get a progressive way, because progressive haven't won elections in this country enough to shape the Supreme Court, but conservatives following the election laws of this country have? That would be Kamala Harris. You want to talk about ending the republic? Kamala Harris and the Democrats' desire to blow up the filibuster, end the United States Senate as we know it, and pack the Supreme Court to impose progressive will on us. That's the authoritarian in the room. That's the fascist in the room. That's the one that has radicalized me in this election. I would have been perfectly happy sitting on the sidelines rooting for injuries because I don't like any of them. But there's one candidate in the race who supports rounding up grandmothers in wheelchairs and throwing them in prison, and one who's willing to pardon those grandmothers. There's one candidate in this race who is willing to end the filibuster, thereby ending the United States Senate as we know it, thereby ending the Supreme Court as the founders intended it, so that she can enact what she hasn't been able to enact by winning elections. That would be Kamala Harris. Donald Trump won't do those things. You can tell me all you want that John Kelly says Donald Trump praised Hitler in private. We had one term of Donald Trump and he wasn't Hitler. I have high doubts he'll be Hitler in the second term, but I know who's throwing wheelchair-bound grandmothers in prison for praying. You'll have to excuse me for not caring about John Kelly's statements about Donald Trump. I don't care. What I care is that Donald Trump's opponents believe the United States was founded in sin and is systemically racist and evil. That is the view of the progressives who advise Kamala Harris. Donald Trump happens to love this country. Kamala Harris will only love this country if it bends to her will. You want me to care about fascists? The fascists are in the White House right now. You want me to care about authoritarians? They're in the White House right now. You don't want boys in your girls' locker room in your small town? Good luck getting money from the federal government. You don't want prisoners' transition surgeries paid for with your tax dollars? Too bad. You want to preserve the United States Senate as a saucer in which the heat of the House can cool? Good luck. You're not going to get it. They want to turn it into a house. Here's the thing. Republicans for 50 years since Roe v. Wade made persuasive cases to elect pro-life presidents and pro-life senators to get a pro-life United States Supreme Court, and they were able to do it. Why? Because Harry Reid and the Senate Democrats decided to screw their rules and blow up the filibuster for judicial nominees, and Mitch McConnell finished it off. He warned them what would happen, and they did it anyway. It was the Democrats who decided, despite the rules of the Senate, to override the rules of the Senate so that they could pack federal courts with progressive judges. All Mitch McConnell did was finish off what they started. He wasn't going to let Harry Reid have his way with lower court judges. Of course, the Republicans were going to do exactly what the Senate Democrats did. The Senate Democrats set the precedent. Mitch McConnell and the Republicans finished off that precedent, getting rid completely of the filibuster for nominations in the Senate. So now what do Democrats want to do? Democrats want to get rid of the filibuster for all legislation so they can pass abortion on demand in the United States Senate, and they can fill up the Supreme Court with additional progressive picks. Why? Because for 50 years, Republicans won Senate seats and presidential elections, and Democrats lost those seats and elections, and Republicans, using the tools within the Constitution and the framework of this republic, were able to ultimately get a conservative Supreme Court. And the Democrats don't want to have to win elections. They don't want to have to make the persuasive case. They don't want to have to win the presidency. They want to just blow up the rules of the Senate to get their way. They want to pack their friends on the Supreme Court to get their way. That sounds pretty damn authoritarian to me. Sounds pretty fascist to me. So you can lecture me, Democrats, all you want on how Donald Trump is some sort of novel threat to the United States when it's the Democrats themselves literally openly campaigning on blowing up the rules of the Senate so they can pack the Supreme Court with their own political nominees. They have tried to discredit the Electoral College because it stands in their way of power. They want to discredit the Senate because it stands in their way of power. They want to discredit the Supreme Court because it stands in the way of their power, just like Hitler did, undermining the institutions of Germany before ultimately taking power. You want to talk about Hitler, they're using his playbook. And they want to blast Donald Trump. You'll have to forgive me for not caring what John Kelly said. The man says Donald Trump made all these flattering statements about Hitler and his generals, and he decided to continue working for the next Hitler. I'll put it to you this way. Democrats could come out tomorrow and declare that Donald Trump is growing a little black mustache and working on his German, and I'll still consider the Democrats more Nazi-like than Donald Trump. Why? Again, he's not throwing wheelchair-bound grandmothers in prison, and the Democrats have just done that. He's not prosecuting whistleblowers in hospitals. The Democrats, they're doing that. He's not forcing small towns in America to put trans boys in girls' bathrooms. The Democrats are doing that. He's not threatening local law enforcement, their federal funding, if they don't comply with the Democrats' nonsense. They're doing that. He's not letting Venezuelan gangs into this country. They're doing that. He's not letting into this country a bunch of illegal aliens who are murdering Americans. They're doing that. He's not turning his back on Israel because some Arab demographic in Michigan is upset about the way the election might go. They're doing that. You'll have to forgive me for not following the Democrats' arguments in this election. There are a lot of people who have convinced themselves that Donald Trump is some terrible, awful person. I hadn't liked him to begin with. But you know what I don't like? I don't like the Democrats openly campaigning for blowing up American institutions that stand in the way of their power, and that's what they openly are campaigning on. I don't like anybody running for president of the United States. But I know one of them isn't going to throw grandmothers in prison for praying, and one of them already has. I don't like either one of these candidates running for president, but I know one of them doesn't think this country is systemically racist, and the other's been campaigning on that fact. I don't particularly care for either person running for president in this country, but I know one of them has funded people burning down America, and the other one hasn't. Oh, spare me January 6th. Look at Wisconsin, look at Minnesota, look at Washington, D.C. Democrats marched through the streets burning down small businesses, throwing Molotov cocktails, and the Democrats and media were like, it's a fiery but mostly peaceful protest. Do you know more property damage was done by the post-George Floyd riots by progressives than by what happened on January 6th? Do I think January 6th was good? No, I do not think it was good. But spare me your moral repugnancy for Donald Trump and January 6th when you won't condemn the rioters. In fact, when small business owners were protesting their businesses being shut down on COVID, you progressives were vilifying them. You had reporters actually on television saying if they get COVID, they should be denied treatment. And then post-George Floyd, by God, you better get in the streets and get COVID as proof you were sufficiently surrounded by others burning down America. Spare me your double standard outrage about Donald Trump, who has not thrown wheelchair-bound grandmothers in prison for praying at abortion clinics, and Joe Biden has. Spare me your outrage about Donald Trump when your side is campaigning on blowing up the United States Senate as the institution it is so you can jam through everything you otherwise haven't been able to jam through. Spare me your outrage about Donald Trump as an authoritarian when you want to destroy the United States Supreme Court as the founders built it, pack it full of progressives to undermine a generation's worth of laws in this country because you haven't been able to win elections. Spare me your outrage about Donald Trump when you have systemically campaigned on systemic racism in this country that is the last best hope for mankind, and you think it does evil in the world that needs to be constrained. Spare me your outrage about Donald Trump when you believe this country was founded not in life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, but in slavery and keeping people in chains. Spare me your outrage about Donald Trump when you have decided that the good in this country is bad and the bad is good, and you've decided that deviant should be normal and normal should be deviant. Spare me your outrage about Donald Trump when you around the world have scaled back American interests and put American lives in jeopardy by squandering our national security strengths. Spare me your outrage about Donald Trump, please. You can call him a Nazi, you can call him a fascist, you can call him the second coming of Hitler, but you've done that to every single Republican since World War II ended. You are the boy who cried wolf. You are the people who blast this country and loathed it unless you're in charge of it. You think the Republicans are bad because they don't like America unless Donald Trump's in charge. They learned it by watching you. I'm sorry. I couldn't care less what John Kelly said about Donald Trump and what Donald Trump supposedly said when he continued working for the man after he supposedly said it. What I care about is what you Democrats have not just said, but you've done and what you said you want to do. Why should I not believe you when you say you want to destroy the Supreme Court as it stands? Why should I not believe you when you say you want to destroy the Senate as it stands? Why should I not believe you when you want to destroy the Electoral College as it stands? And each of those things, what do they have in common? They're impediments to your power. You know what the fascists, the Nazis, the authoritarians, and the tyrants want? Power. And you people sure want a hell of a lot of power, and you don't want to surrender it, and you delegitimize any institution that stands in your way from grabbing power and keeping power. And when this election is over, if you lose, you're going to blame the Russians, you're going to blame the Iranians, you're going to blame American men, you're going to blame American voters, you're going to blame everyone. You're not going to take responsibility for yourselves. You're not going to think maybe we should have reined it in. You're not going to think maybe we went too far. You're not going to think maybe we're too fringe. You're not going to think maybe we went too progressive. No, you're going to blame everyone else because you never have the ability to institutionally look and analyze yourselves and what you stand for and what you want. You never have the ability to self-reflect on why the American Republic has rejected you. You blame them, you hate them, you delegitimize the institutions, and you call everybody else a Nazi and fascist while it is your party burning down small businesses across America. It is your party allowing homelessness to run rampant, and you just change the name to urban camping and say it's fine. It's your party putting boys into girls' sports and taking girls' scholarships away from them in the name of equity. It is your party that wants to let all sorts of criminals into this country and then demand we give them amnesty. It is your party literally throwing wheelchair-bound grandmothers into jail for praying at abortion clinics. Spare me your outrage about Donald Trump. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. Listen, those of you on the phones, just be patient with me. I will get to your phone calls after this segment. I went a little rambly this past segment. I needed to get that off my chest. In Hillsborough County, Florida, on this date in 2016. Hillary Clinton's margin, it looks like, of Democrats was 6% ahead of Republicans, and she ultimately won the county. In 2020, the turnout for Democrats over Republicans was ahead by 7%, and Joe Biden won the county. Today, Hillsborough County, Florida, is tied. Republican and Democrat turnout matching each other. We're starting to have gone so far into early voting, we can get some patterns. There's still not a ton you can make about it. Why? Because early voting votes count the same as Election Day votes. Some people who might show up on Election Day showing up early, but there are some trend lines we can get. We'll get to those. But some of you don't know about this case, and I'm kind of appalled. Her name is Paulette Harlow. Paulette Harlow is 75 years old and in a wheelchair. She has been sentenced to 2 years in federal prison for praying at an abortion clinic. Now, in fairness and intellectual honesty, Paulette Harlow went inside the abortion clinic, joined hands with others in a prayer chain that was interpreted by the feds as trying to block people. Now, the defendants all say it was a prayer chain. They were holding hands and praying inside the abortion clinic. What the Merrick Garland's Department of Justice said is they were trying to block people from entering the clinic. No one has been prosecuted under the FACE Act, which is a federal law that prohibits obstruction of abortion clinics, in a very long time. But the Biden administration, to prove its solidarity with abortion rights activists, decided to start enforcing the FACE Act. And Paulette Harlow, a 75-year-old grandmother in a wheelchair, has gone to federal prison for 2 years for a violation of the SAFE Act for praying inside an abortion clinic. Spare me your outrage about fascists and authoritarians on the right when you are sending to prison 75-year-old wheelchair-bound grandmothers for praying. You can accept, but all you want. This is a 75-year-old woman in a wheelchair who's going to prison for praying with others inside an abortion clinic. Yeah, you're absolutely right that I couldn't care less about what John Kelly says Donald Trump might have said privately to him, and he kept working for the guy. I care about Paulette Harlow. I also care about getting you to go to ericforhillsdale.com today and letting you get your free pocket Constitution and Declaration of Independence from Hillsdale College. Not only that, you can also get Imprimis for free. You can get the podcast network from Hillsdale College completely for free. You can get Dr. Larry Arnn's lectures and Victor Davis Hansen's lectures on citizenship of the Constitution for free. You get so much. It's a great relationship to have. ericforhillsdale.com, ERICK, ericforhillsdale.com. You go to ericforhillsdale.com, you put in your name, address, email. They're going to send you a free pocket Constitution Declaration of Independence. I've got one. Keep it in my bag right over here. I'm looking at it. I keep it in my bag. I don't wear suits with pockets anymore unless I got to be on TV. But it comes in handy. It's great. And you get it for free from Hillsdale College. You also get Imprimis for free. I need to bring my copy to the office and wave it for you for the microphone. It's great. You get all this from Hillsdale College. They've been doing this since the 1800s. Go to ericforhillsdale.com today. ericforhillsdale.com, ERICK. Welcome. It's Eric Erickson across the United States of America. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I am happy to have you. I'm going to start with Mario, calling from Palm Coast, Florida. Welcome to the show, Mario. How are you?
Outstanding. Thank you for taking my call. And I'd like to preface what I'm going to ask by just saying this. Although we know, you and I both know that Rush Limbaugh can never be replaced, I consider you Rush Limbaugh 2.0. So I just wanted to get that out there.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. That's very flattering.
My point and my reason for calling was all the idiocy going on the left while Trump is going to throw everybody in jail and he's going to send the military and the police knocking on their doors at night. No one seems to mention that Walt did that in Minnesota for COVID violators. I'm sure out there someplace there's a phone number where they have to call and say, hey, my neighbor so-and-so on this street is violating the COVID policies, And I would be damned if that didn't happen and the knock on the door didn't come shortly thereafter.
Mm-hmm.
So with all this idiocy about that, they're professing what Trump is going to do, but they have already done it. And if we can get a phone number out there and demonstrate, hey, this was the number. This is the number they called if you wanted to snitch on your neighbors.
Yeah, look, that's a totally great point, and I think people completely forget that. And, Gavin Newsom did it in California. They did it in New York. They were empowering the affluent white female urban liberals, the awfuls, to bully people, use them as a mob against others. Yeah, it's a real problem when the Democrats want to call everyone else fascist, Hitler, or what have you, when they're the ones who are encouraging people to turn in their neighbors. And as well, Mario, it's the same way if you go back to the Obama administration. Remember, he set up a hotline in the White House where you could call if your neighbor was giving you lies about Obamacare. You could call and report your neighbor. People forget that one. True story.
And what's very interesting? My background is in Cuba and in Germany. And when Batista fell, the first thing they did was they snitched on their neighbors to get food and commodities. And they did that with the brown shirts in Germany. So what they're doing and professing Trump to do is not any different from exactly what they're doing. But no one seems to mention that. Never hear that anywhere. Oh,
you never do, because the media is in on it. Mario, thanks very much for the phone call. The media is in on this. The press is, okay, listen. This is really important for everybody to understand here. This is something that you've got to appreciate this. Members of the media are perfectly fine calling Donald Trump and Republicans Hitler, fascist, and authoritarian, while ignoring the Democrats' fascism and authoritarianism because they actually endorse it. Younger members of the American Press Corps also believe America is systemically racist, and they know the Democrats do. Younger reporters in this country also want to delegitimize the Senate because they think it's a threat to democracy, even though it actually represents the sovereignty of the states. They don't care. Younger reporters want to get rid of the Electoral College because they want majority vote, knowing that California and New York could dominate the country and we could have progressive rule forever, regardless of what people in the other 48 states want. And young reporters want to end the Supreme Court because they don't want to take the time to help Democrats win elections over 50 years to shift the ideological pull of the court. They just want to do it with the snap of their finger. Impatient authoritarians. Members of the press are complicit in this with the Democrats. Now, let's go back to the phones. I want to go to Lisa. You're up next. Welcome.
Hey, Eric. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hey, first of all, I agree with Mario. You are a wonderful replacement.
Oh, well, thank you.
God
That's very
bless
kind.
you. Conversationalist. I was telling the call screener that there is no other talk show host that is talking about the part of if you're on the fence, you can't figure out who you want to vote for because you don't agree with either candidate, leave it blank. I guess you could write something in if you knew who to write in. But I was wondering if you could explain that in more detail so maybe someone who doesn't know they have that option.
You're going to get me in trouble, Lisa, because Trump voters in particular hate it when I say this. But listen, God's honest truth, y'all. I cast my ballot, and I filled out every line on the ballot. But I know there are people out there who just can't bring themselves. They can't stomach the idea of voting for Donald Trump. I know these people. I'm related to some of them. I have friends in church who are like, I just can't do it. And I keep telling them that doesn't mean you have to vote for Kamala Harris. You are allowed to leave the line blank and still cast the rest of the ballot. You should show up and vote in every race you feel comfortable voting in. But if you, in good conscience, cannot vote for a candidate, you should not vote for that candidate. And Lisa, as an aside, and again, this is going to get me in trouble with people, I really, really hate both sides trying to bully people into voting for their side. I'll give you reasons why I think you should vote for Donald Trump. And if you disagree with me, we're still going to be friends. I love my neighbor. God bless you. You're not destroying the country. You and I just disagree. But the idea
Right.
that either party should, instead of trying to persuade someone, bully them into voting, yelling at them, badgering them, and telling them they must hate America if they're not voting a certain way. I mean, a pox on both their houses doing this. There are some people who despise both candidates and do not want to vote for them, and I still want those people to participate in the election, to show up and vote for the candidates they're comfortable voting for. And I do frankly think if millions of people show up and they don't vote for president, both parties are going to look at that and say, wow, there are millions of people up for grabs if we do a better job picking our presidential candidate. And you might actually improve politics. It actually is true. Sometimes farmers know if you let the field lie fallow, you get a better crop later. And some people want to leave that line blank. God bless them. Go vote.
Right. And there are the Senate and the House, that's equally important.
Yes.
So people need to go vote. And
Okay.
cast your ballot for me because I can't vote.
Lisa, I got to ask you a question. So, where are you from?
I'm originally born and raised in the city, just northeast of Detroit.
Okay. Because
I'm a halfbacker.
all right, because I'm listening to you talk. I love your accent. I'm like, you ain't from around here, are you?
No, but I do use y'all quite often.
God
now.
bless you. Yeah. Okay. So let me ask you this question, so you're not up there now, but in Michigan, you do have these races. And the first time in 40 years, in 2022, that entire state flipped Democrat, which had never happened before. There have been Democrats, but the whole state, legislature, governor, Senate, everything went Democrat. I got a suspicion, looking at the polling up there, that the people have gotten fed up with uniparty rule and are ready to start voting Republican again. Any sense from your relatives up there?
Oh yeah, they're big. If you're not in the car industry, you don't have a job up there, basically. So yeah, they're all Trumpers, all of them, basically.
That's my suspicion. Well, look, I'll leave you there. Thank you very much for calling. Thank you for the kind words. And Lisa's right. And listen, I don't want to, my friends who are diehard Trump supporters, or even those who listening who might support Kamala Harris, I don't want to make you mad because I'm not trying to discourage people from voting. I want people to go vote. But I know there are Americans who despise both candidates. And I would rather those people show up and vote for the Senate and vote for the House and vote for state legislative races or governor's race if it's in your state, whatever, than just stay home and say, well, I'm not voting for president, so I'm not voting. There are plenty of good people on the ballot. If you can't stand Harris or Trump, there are plenty of good people. There are people running for sheriffs in states. There are people running for district attorney in states. There are people running for solicitors in states. There are people running for state house and state senate. Find those people. There are good people who run for office, and just because you're discouraged by the presidential field, go elevate a good person to office at a lower level. Get that person engaged and build a better farm team that's more to your liking. Don't stay home. You have this opportunity as an American, an opportunity people have died for, to go vote. I'm not going to bully you into voting for one candidate or the other, as some people are. I understand some of you simply just can't do it. I totally get that. I was that person in 2016. I get it. I'm not going to denounce you for doing it. What I am going to say, though, is you have a very long ballot. In every state, there's going to be a long ballot. I was actually kind of surprised how short my general election ballot was in Georgia for my county. But there are lots of things that you as a citizen get the right to do. There are people who died for you to be able to have that right, so take advantage of it. And if you go get a ballot and it's got 30 different offices on it and there's only one you want to vote for, it's okay. Go vote for that one. Go vote for that one. And what you have done has exercised more power than most of the people who have ever walked on planet Earth have been able to exercise. Your power to pick your elected official. And that's something we shouldn't take for granted. Mark, you're going to be up next on the Eric Erickson Show. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, hey there, Eric. How you doing?
Great.
Hey, something funny that I read the other, I guess it was just yesterday on Nextdoor. I've been on there for a while.
Yeah, man, Nextdoor, sometimes that site just goes off the rails.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff sometimes. But I thought I'd like to see what people are writing about the election. And somebody posted this week that she had a terrible time with her absentee ballot. She went to the wrong place to drop it off, went to a polling place. They sent her another one. And so eventually just says she just tore the thing up and voted in person. And it just seems like she's at least proving the thing I think, is that this need for absentee ballots is really overstated, and we've come up with some process that just isn't really needed for very many people. I'm just kind of curious
okay. So
how you see that.
I first of all, I find this conversation absurd in the country that it could take us a week to find out who the president is. If it takes us a week to find out who the president of the United States is, good luck containing the conspiracy theorists. It's absurd that other countries can do this with a hand-marked ballot. Now, it's true. This is something a lot of people don't understand in these other countries where you say, well, it takes less. I mean, they can find out the winner in 12 hours. Yeah, but they're voting in one race. My ballot did not have a U.S. Senate race, but it had a presidential race, a House race, a state House race, a state Senate race, a district attorney, a solicitor, a sheriff, a coroner. I'm trying to think. My race had a bunch, and then it had 3 questions on it. Yeah, people could say, Milei they counted the ballots overnight. Yeah, but he was the only person on the ballot. You had literally one race on the ballot. We have complicated ballots in this country. We're different from other countries. We do things differently, concurrently. I honestly think that we should all vote on Election Day. I voted by absentee ballot because I've got to work on Election Day. I haven't been able to vote on Election Day since I started on TV back in 2009 because I'm always on TV or radio on Election Day traveling. So it makes it impossible for me to be able to do it. I got to vote absentee. Most people don't. It's convenient. But now with early voting, yeah. I mean, in Georgia, you got 2 weeks of early voting. Some states, they started early voting in September. I actually disagree with that. I think 2 weeks is plenty. But most people don't need an absentee ballot. And by the way, if you get an absentee ballot, it is required by law to come with a return envelope. So you shouldn't have to even go drop it off somewhere. You stick it back in the mail. I'm actively monitoring mine to make sure it gets delivered. It's just, I think most people just go vote early. Tearing up your ballot's kind of crazy. Scott in Tulsa, Oklahoma, welcome.
Hey, nice to talk to you, Eric.
You too.
I called about several reasons, but you did a very good job of articulating my feelings in your last segment. But Kamala Harris was on with Anderson Cooper yesterday, and she dodged a bullet of talking about the border, and she put it back on Congress. And she said that they haven't done anything about the border, basically, because they're waiting on Congress to do something. Well, why don't we just enforce the laws that we already have?
Yes. I got to tell you, again, she went into this thing solo. This was supposed to be a presidential debate. Trump declined. She went by herself and still lost the debate. It was wild. Anderson Cooper ran circles around her, just pointing out her inconsistencies of position. Scott, when we get back, I've got some great audio that someone prepared other than me, contrasting her old position and her new position on the border. I want to be able to play it for you. Right now, however, I've got to tell you about Americans for Prosperity. They're putting points on the board for conservatives right now. They're doing door knocking. They're getting people out to vote. They're motivating people, teaching them about common sense conservative solutions for your family, for your friends, for your local government. They're teaching people how to go to their state government, their local government, and even just talk to their neighbors and be really informed so that people can trust their information about common sense conservative solutions. What you want to do is go to americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. Go sign up with AFP today. You don't have to be a door knocker if you don't want to. If you just want to find out the useful information that you can share with friends and family, they'll teach you. They'll give it to you. If you want to go to your local or state government to talk about common sense conservative solutions, they'll teach you how to do that. They make you an effective activist for common sense conservative solutions for things like school choice and border security and common sense reforms for small businesses and families. americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. So what are the early voting trends in this country? All 50 states are now voting, and what can we discern from the early vote? You got to be careful here because an early vote and an election day vote count the same. And some people change their patterns. But what's notable here are the changes of patterns. Republicans are early voting. In North Carolina, The Republican early vote is now tied for the Democrats for the first time in more than a decade. In 2016, 18, 20, and 22, Democrats outpaced Republicans pretty significantly in North Carolina for the early vote. This year, they're tied. In Miami-Dade County, typically the Democrats outpace the Republicans. Right now, the Republicans are outpacing the Democrats. In Hillsborough County, Florida, as I said, they're tied for the first time. What we're seeing is that Republican voters have re-embraced early voting and absentee voting, something they hadn't done before. Now, the data is somewhat skewed as well. There's a decline in absentee ballots and an increase in the early vote. And the reason is because of COVID from 2020. In 2020, a lot of people got absentee ballots. They didn't want to show up at a polling location. This year, the absentee ballot requests are down, but the early voting has increased. More significantly, though, here's what we're seeing. We're seeing working class, low propensity voters show up for early voting. That's the thing that's bothering Democrats right now, because low propensity voters tend to vote on Election Day, if at all, and they're showing up now. But who's not? Black men. They're not showing up. Black men are not showing up at the polls. Doesn't mean they're showing up in waves to vote for Donald Trump. They're not showing up at all. There's a phenomenon on the Democratic side called Souls to Polls. They rally the black churches the Sunday before the election in early vote states to get all the voters up. Normally, they're outpacing turnout right now, and they're not. Black men are not showing up right now. Maybe it'll be Souls to Polls, but I doubt it. Those are your trends right now. That's the best we can do looking at those trends, but it's got Democrats nervous in places like Nevada and Georgia. This hour of the program brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. They are in Newnan, Georgia. They will help you nationwide, wherever you are. If you're in charge of a business and your business needs to grow and you need access to capital, you got good credit, they're willing to help you and move fast. You need $75,000 for heavy equipment. You need $250,000 to buy a franchise, something like that. Reach out to them, FirstLibertyGA.com. The Frost family has been making their own decisions since the 90s, helping businesses become big businesses. FirstLibertyGA.com. When we come back, boy, do I have audio for you. Kamala Harris on stage with Anderson Cooper in Philadelphia yesterday. What a mess. You know what? What I'm going to do when we come back, I'm going to play you some of her answers, and then I'm going to let the Democrats tell you what they thought about it.